The federal government will be desperately hoping the passage of its preventative detention bill last night will bring an end to weeks of political drama.
What a shambles. What chaos.
Order.
The government did not choose to be in this position. The preventative detention regime would allow for the court to detain the worst of the worst offenders.
Unacceptable behaviour was occurring in the House last night.
Oh, gutless. Gutless. You don't even want to debate it.
Federal Attorney General Mark Dreyfus has snapped during an extraordinary media conference.
Do not interrupt. I will not be apologising.
The Attorney General has apologised. That's the appropriate course of action to take.
Things are never pretty by the end of a parliamentary year. Everyone is tired. There's always a rush to get legislation through or reports released. And as the Albanese Government heads to its second Christmas in office, the fallout from the High Court's decision ending indefinite immigration detention has left it scrambling for a solution, and the opposition appearing to set the terms of the debate.
The Albanese Government failed to prepare for a High Court decision it knew was coming for almost 6 months, which resulted in the release of almost 150 hardcore criminals, including rapists, murderers and pedophiles, into the Australian community. Will the Prime Minister apologise to the Australian people?
No wonder that the government was so keen to try to finish the parliamentary year talking about something else, even if it meant urgently recalling the House of Representatives yesterday with just a few hours' notice to rush through legislation for a new preventative detention regime. The bill eventually passed last night.
This considered, measured and responsible legislation will see individuals re-detained where a court is satisfied that the person poses an unacceptable risk of committing a serious violent or sexual offence.
The result of the division is ayes 68, noes 59.
But with lots of questions unanswered.
Will you release a list of how many and what offences are among the cohort that has been released today?
Do you have the number of people that qualify for that first threshold, the 7+ years of imprisonment?
How many, for example, have committed a murder or an unlawful killing?
We've already begun working through the worst offenders to make sure that we can do everything we can to keep the community safe.
The bitterness of the political brawl sat oddly with a day of great sadness in the House of Representatives yesterday, where politicians from all parties remembered a well-liked and admired colleague, Peter Murphy, who died on Monday.
There are some members of Parliament whose contribution earns the grudging respect of the chamber. There are others, rarer still, who win genuine admiration and real affection across the political spectrum. Peter Murphy was one of those.
The political year is not yet completely over. Next week, the mid-year review of the budget will be released. It will include forecasts that reflect national accounts data released this week, which show that without the economic boost we are getting from migration, the economy would be in recession.
Our economy is resilient in parts, but we know that these are hard times for a lot of Australians. Household consumption was flat in the quarter, with Australians having to make even more room for mortgage repayments.
In the world of political management, the plan was to leave some clear air to give people a sense of the government achieving a few things. That started with yesterday's National Cabinet meeting.
Health reform, disability reform, National Firearms Registry. This has been a very significant meeting.
It was indeed a surprisingly significant meeting. State leaders had been warning for days they would not be interested in talking about NDIS funding without assurances that a GST deal would continue to compensate them for special treatment given to Western Australia. But more importantly, the states have been more than happy to have vacated the disability space ever since the National Disability Insurance Scheme appeared on the horizon. The federal government certainly gave the states what they wanted on the GST and on health funding, but the National Cabinet deal has brought the states firmly back into the disability services delivery system.
We can continue to partner, whether it's with the Commonwealth on NDIS or health and hospital delivery, or on the suite of other services that we are responsible for delivering. And this is why the GST discussion was important to us.
I think that if you look at the NDIS, the GST, if you look at changes to health reform, I think we've achieved more in the last 2 days than many thought would be possible.
And news today of a deal on industrial relations reform with the Senate crossbench, which will see key Labor policy ambitions met, even if some of the more contentious issues are left until later. And the Coalition sees it as nothing but a cynical distraction.
It's a perfect example. Mr Burke stands up, and I mean, we also know why Mr Burke had to stand up. I mean, good God, the train wreck in relation to immigration. You know, a fourth released detainee by this government has actually been charged by police. I mean, you can see why. I've got no issues. You had to do a distraction. But why did you compromise the employers of Australia?
Beyond the usual end-of-year noise, though, the government is finishing the year knowing it has to lift its political management game. Peter Dutton has too often of late seemed to be setting the terms and tone of the debate. With a faint whiff of blood in the water, the press gallery pack is writing about the government's messaging woes rather than its policies. Briefly this afternoon, in an annual ritual, hostilities ceased.
The Leader of the Opposition, it's a terrible job, I know, having done it, but I wish you well on a personal level. And I think that in spite of other things I say publicly, what I say privately as well, we are always able to engage, and I would have more conversations with you in a month than I had in the previous 3 years when I was in your position with my counterpart. And you need to be able to talk in a civil way even when there are disagreements. We're able to do that.
I want to say thank you very much, Prime Minister, for the engagement we've been able to have. As you point out, there's rightly a robust adversarial nature to this chamber, and for better or worse, that's the part that the Australian public sees. But there is a lot where we're able to resolve and issues that we can work on for the betterment of our country, and I thank you for that engagement.
If only.